RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. You want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, October 14th. We'll be taking a review of yesterday's Week 6 NFL slate. We got tons of stuff up on the docket this week and tonight. So hit the thumbs up button on your way in the door. Give me those thumbs. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. Remember, we got Monday Night Football tonight. It's the Jets and the Bills. We have all the showdown content for you here at RotoGrinders, the pre-lock show. A little bit earlier than normal. So check that out on the YouTube channel. Always remember, we got the new Combo Light package. We Combo Premium gets you like everything that you could possibly imagine here at RotoGrinders, but Combo Light gets you all of our premium content, written content, plus all of our research tools, which includes Court IQ for NBA, which includes Gridiron IQ for NFL, Plate IQ for MLB. It's all four major sports for Sim Labs, which is MLB, NFL, NBA, and PGA. And you could use that you have an app on your phone. You could use Sim Labs, and you can build all your lineups through our simulation product, and that is for an even cheaper price than Combo Premium. So check that out below. Click on the link in the description below. But we're going to talk about Week 6. James, I squeaked by by the skin of my teeth on DraftKings. My cash lineup, I had Dak Prescott in my cash lineup. And I still got there. I still got there, James. I guess that's the power of NFL cash games, is that the fields are soft enough that I could get 5 points at my quarterback position and 3 points at my tight end with Jake Ferguson at 5K, and still get over the cash line. So I'm like, woof. So FanDuel, not so much. FanDuel, I wasn't so lucky, so ended up pretty much breaking even-ish around for the day. How about you?
I was muted. I did okay. I cashed 1 of 3 lineups. I was actually at a wedding all weekend, so I did not have quite as much content as I usually put out. I didn't get to put out my big article that I put out every Saturday, which was a little bit of a bummer. But I did also get to build a very drunk lineup, and it was the one lineup that cashed. So that was fun. But it was a really interesting week from GPPs. So I think cash games I probably would have been fine if I'd have played. But from a GPP standpoint, like I think it was an interesting week.
We saw, obviously, we have SimLab. We have Results DB. This is free, by the way. You could go to Results DB on RotoGrinders and see all the featured contests you could see here, right here. So in any sport, you can go back any date you want. You can go back 3 weeks or whatever. We have we download the CSVs for all the contests, all the major contests, in the major sports. So you could go to the spin move single entry contest. You can go to the $3 play action, the first down, the $50 red zone, even the high stakes stuff, and just basically see everyone's lineups and see all the results, how many rosters people rostered, all the ownership and exposure. You can compare exposures of any player you want. User, all the top users. See how owned certain team stacks, game stacks, everything like that. Duplicates, obviously, which is good for Showdown, and everything like that. So we always check this out on a Monday. And starting by, we'll start at running back, for instance, and then because the quarterbacks in GPT are kind of tied with wide receivers. Bucky Irving surely didn't look that great of a wasn't going to be that great of an outcome until late in the game, where he was able to get a nice big run and score a touchdown. But let's organize it by points and at running back, and it's very similar that we've been saying for much of this year, that running back scoring is much flatter than it used to be, other than if you find the 2 or 3 outliers per week, and it's still possible, depending on the size of your contest, to win without having, like, you could have won without Sean Tucker, right, at 4K, at 0.4% owned. But like Joe Mixon got 30 points. Henry got 28 points. Bijan 25, Najee 23, Algier actually 22. I mean, both the Falcons running backs. Montgomery 21. And then from an ownership perspective, we go to ownership. Bucky Irving 18.5, Bijan 25.5, Pollard 17.8. Henry's there. I guess Gibbs and Barkley, Eckler, maybe they didn't get there. Hubbard got 15. Kamara got 17. So for the most part, I mean, we could see here just by ownership that you could have made plenty and possibly came in first, depending on contest, even with the chalkiest, running backs on the slate, because of how flat it was. You would have loved to have Mixon. You would have liked to have Henry, but of course Henry was 8K. So you needed 28 points at 8K. So I don't know what you did in GPP, James, from a running back perspective, but I stayed pretty much. I pretty much ate the running back chalk for the most part. Although I did throw in some Josh Jacobs and J.K. Dobbins into the mix. And I was a little bit surprised that J.K. Dobbins was only 8% owned. Jacobs, I wasn't shocked. He was like 10% owned. I thought he would be about 10% owned. But, I mean, Dobbins without Gus Edwards there, I know they're on the road, but the Chargers were favored in that matchup. I'm not a J.K. Dobbins guy.
Yeah.
Right? People don't play J.K. Dobbins, especially when he ends up being 15 to 18% owned. Also not a Derrick Henry guy. And James, I played 12 lineups. I played Derrick Henry in 2 out of 12 of my lineups. It's very rare for me to play Henry. But even at 16%, if you told me he was 16% owned, I still have no problem playing Derrick Henry because I thought the Ravens Commanders game was a good game environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I from the J.K. Dobbins standpoint, I had him projected for around 14% ownership. He came in under what I thought that he would. People just jammed Bucky Irving, right? Like 60% owned or something in the power.
He was 38. You see it on the screen on the
yeah. In that context,
it's all if you're playing the power sweep. I mean, if we go over, like I can go over right over here. Let's say, I mean, what we're talking about, like the power sweep.
Yeah.
The main power sweep. Yeah, he was 58% owned.
I mean, people just jammed him, man. And that was fine. Like I expected that. I said in the chat, actually, I boosted him up. He initially projected for like 28% ownership based on aggregate. And then I was like, that's not, he's going to be higher than that. So I boosted him, and I boosted him up to about 36%, which came in about right in the Million Maker. So people just jammed him in, and that was fine. I had Bucky Irving in all 3 of my lineups. I had absolutely no reason to think that I should not play him. And even at halftime, people are like, oh, well, he's only at 8 carries with 1 target. Like, he's going to be a failure. And I'm just looking at it like, it's 5,400. They have a game script in the second half where they can utilize him. It looks like he's going to end up with 15 carries and 3 targets. And if he scores a touchdown, he's going to get like 16 fantasy points. And lo and behold, he ended up with 18 fantasy points. So it's one of those things where we look at running backs and we look at volume, and it's weird. People are like, oh, well, if they didn't dominate the first half, they're going to be a failure. And it's like, no, man, every running back this year is scoring between 18 and 24 fantasy points. If he scores between 18 and 24 fantasy points, he's just fine. And he did.
Right.
So
it comes down to touchdown variance. I mean,
yeah.
You take a look at Jacobs. Jacobs had 12 points with no touchdowns. And, they scored these long touchdowns with Watson and Reed scored. It's like, well, all Josh Jacobs needed to do was just fall in the end zone instead of them passing the ball, and he would have had 18 points also, right? So, I mean, and same thing for Pollard. And to be fair, I used to think Pollard's run out was a little bit more lucky than Irving's run out.
Yeah.
Because Pollard, Spears got injured, and then Pollard just basically played like 100% of the snaps.
Right.
And he scored that
20-yard touchdown.
So technically, I mean, you could say that essentially for so many running backs. Bijan had 2 touchdowns. You take away one of those touchdowns, you know how many points he has? 19.5. So it's like,
Right.
like all these running backs have very similar opportunities. It just comes down to, will they score touchdowns or some long rush? Will they break a 60-yard rush or not? And this is one of the main reasons why if running backs project well, I don't really care that much about like the guy's going to be so owned, because half the time, I mean, not even half the time, like let's say you play David Montgomery instead of Bijan. Well, I mean, Bijan scored 25 and David Montgomery scored 21. If you played him over like Tony Pollard, congratulations, you scored 3.2 points higher than Tony Pollard. That's probably not the reason why you're winning the GPP, right? Yeah. Unless you found the outlier. If you played Mixon, I guess, at 6,900 and he scored 30, right? Or Sean Tucker, who no one played other than one person that won the main millie with a lineup that is people. I saw people on Reddit, James, trying to rationalize what the $20 millie lineup with Jordan Love, with no pass catchers, with Bucks, with it wasn't 150 maxer. It wasn't even a multi-maxer. It was a single bullet. It won the main millie, I think, by like 11 points with a 0.04% Sean Tucker, 4K Sean Tucker in it, with other Buccaneers in it.
No Baker Mayfield. It was Jordan Love.
You know how many lineups look like this in the millie?
I know.
This is like 10 to 15% of the lineups in the $20 millie look like it's a user with one lineup that it feels like they just took their keyboard and they banged their head against it. And then there's just 20,000 of those lineups, and every once in a while one of those lineups just is like, it just happens to be a mix of a 1% owned Mixon and a 0.04% whatever. I mean, dude, you see 0.04% fifth wide receivers in some of these lineups also that the guy doesn't even take the field. So I'm not trying to let the person comes out and says, "Oh yeah, I thought through and blah blah blah." It's a one lineup person that banged their head against the keyboard. There's nothing. Nothing to think about.
To be fair with him, with that lineup, one, don't try to rationalize it. Two, what's funny about that lineup is Baker Mayfield was $100 cheaper than Jordan Love.
Right, I know.
And that lineup would have kind of made sense with that. And he would have won by like 14 points instead of 11. Right. It's so funny. It's such a funny thing. But you know, for me, I just thought that Bucky Irving was just like the best play. I played some Tony Pollard. I played Saquon Barkley instead of Derrick Henry, hoping for Philadelphia just being able to manhandle Cleveland, which everyone has been able to do. That didn't work out, but it is what it is. I thought the running back was pretty easy, like Bucky Irving, Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, and then if you want to pivot, then pivot. But you and I have talked about it for weeks now. Running back is not the position that's winning you GPPs right now. So it's just don't take much time to think about it.
I mean, but I'd rather try to take a shot on running backs that do have a ceiling. That's why Derrick Henry at 8K, it's like, okay, this could be the outlier. And it really wasn't. I mean, he scored, he's the third highest scoring running back. But you didn't need Henry at 8K at 28 points. It wasn't necessary.
Well, yeah, that's why I played Saquon Barkley for the same reason. Saquon Barkley is a guy who can have outliers. Him and Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, like these expensive guys, they can have these long tails. But like it with those guys, it ends up being like, okay, well, I built a really cheap stack, so I have access now to Derrick Henry or Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley. But you're not really starting your lineups with them most of the time. You're starting your lineups with like the guys in that $5,500 to $6,500 range and like the easy plays. And then if you end up based on having a cheap stack, you can end up playing one of the expensive guys that have those tails. But I don't think you should be starting your lineups with them right now.
Okay, let's take a look at some stacks. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. Obviously, the Cowboys just they got trucked. They got trucked.
Yeah.
I didn't think Dak would be the highest owned. I knew the Cowboy stacks would be popular. I didn't. I think I played one. I played one on DraftKings, one on FanDuel because I was playing Dak in my cash line. I mean, like I played a triple stack in GPP, so I played Dak plus CD plus Tolbert plus Ferguson in one lineup rather than do a two plus. Just like okay, the Cowboys, all of them do well, and then all my other lineups I didn't play Cowboys at all. But I did, and I didn't play any Kirk Cousins lineups because I thought the Falcons, like Drake London, Mooney, McLeod, Bijan, all of them were as combinatorically were going to be much higher owned. So I played Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers. I played Jaden Daniels, McLaurin, Ertz. And they came in less owned than I thought. I mean, yeah, they're still in the top 5 in ownership. But I thought that Lamar would be a little bit more owned. They were closer to 15%. And Jaden Daniels would be like 10 or 12. I was more concerned about Jaden Daniels' ownership than anything else. And then I took a shot, James. I played 2 Will Levis lineups.
Oh, no.
And I didn't realize that Will Levis is just he had his best game and he still sucks.
Dude, you can't. I heard so many people talking about Titan stacks throughout the week. And they're like, "Oh man,
not enough. He was only 4%. He was only 4% owned.
No, yeah. I know.
And the receivers, like, dude, did Calvin Ridley got 8 targets. His line was 0 for 0. 8 targets.
Yeah, that's because Will Levis
he had 9 rushing yards. So
he can't throw the ball, dude. He doesn't know how to throw a football. He has all that arm strength, but he you know what the problem is? He loves mayo so much that he lathers his hands up in mayo before the games and then tries to throw the ball and it just slips out. That's the problem. I can match your Will Levis with I played my lineup that I made very hungover Sunday morning that came to me in a dream was a Drake May double stack. I played Drake May plus.
You should get ostracized. I mean, that come on.
Well, I was hungover and
like
drunk.
A 15-point total. The Titans.
I was hungover and drunk, and you decided to play Will Levis because you thought that it was a worthwhile play. So who's the real one here? But Drake May.
Did you play May with Polk or something? May Polk.
Yeah, Henry I played with Polk and Henry. I needed Demario Douglas. It was my best scoring lineup actually. I cashed with it. It was my best lineup. Because May put up 22 fantasy points. He was not bad. I mean, from a real life standpoint, he was pretty bad, but he wasn't terrible. Hunter Henry scored a touchdown. Jalen Polk sucked, but I had a 2v2. If I would have instead gone Derrick Henry and Demario Douglas instead of Saquon Barkley and Jalen Polk, I would have placed like top 10 in the power sweep, which is silly. But here we are. Didn't do it.
What do you think? We're talking about quarterbacks. What do you think of Spencer Rattler? I mean, he ended up as the 4th highest owned quarterback in the Millie,
and he
at
scored
4K. The problem is that like, what's Bub means is ownership. I mean, like,
right,
like, you know how imagine playing Rattler Olave lineups and then seeing the score at the end of that game going, okay, now I'm going to check my lineups. I'm obviously at the top. And then like Olave has like no points. And you're like, how did that happen? Well, he got concussed. It's like, well, who took all of his points? Oh, Jawan Johnson and Shaheed. It's like, no, Shaheed actually scored a punt touchdown and Bub Means has 30 points. And you're like, who is that? And
this
was exactly who is that? Right.
This is a week for the no-name dude scoring a whole bunch of points. I thought the Rattler was fine at 4K. Like, I'm not going to argue with anybody who wants to play 4K quarterback, and putting up 15 fantasy points at 4K is pretty good. That's fine. Especially because quarterback really outside of Baker Mayfield, quarterback was kind of mid. I mean 20 something fantasy points. Like,
Goff at
Yeah.
28, Jordan Love 26.
Yeah, I mean, you could have gotten by it if CeeDee Lamb would have crushed and like we had really expensive options at both running back and wide receiver that ended up going off, I think that Rattler lineups would have had higher finishes.
Right.
But he didn't. So I think it was fine. I didn't have any problem with that.
Did you expect Jalen Tolbert to be the second highest owned wide receiver and Darnell Mooney to actually be more owned than Drake London?
So no, on both of those things. One, the Jalen Tolbert ownership is out of control. That doesn't. It's every single week we have somebody who you and I just look at and we're just like,
yeah. But the thing is, I played Jalen Tolbert as if he was going to be 14%.
Yeah, I mean, I played him as if he was going to be 11%.
Okay, so there you go. Same thing for Darnell Mooney. Like, I thought Mooney would actually be higher owned than Tolbert and still be like,
okay, so
16%.
No, the Darnell Mooney part was like, I had Darnell Mooney projected for 21% owned. I think that one made sense. Drake London, I had projected for 26% owned, and that is where he came under where I thought he was going to be. So the Darnell Mooney ownership doesn't weird me out. The Drake London one, and the other one that was really weird was Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson came in.
To him? Why was he so low owned?
I don't know. I had him projected for 17% owned, and I think
he came in at 7.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the weird one.
He came in lower owned than Steph Diggs at 7,400, lower owned than Rashid Shaheed at 5,600, then Jameson Williams at 5,800, then Tank Dell at 6,200, which is 100 more, was almost twice as owned as him.
Yeah,
Jaden Reed was 7K and 12 and twice as owned. Like, did people just go on to the Panthers suck? I mean,
I think so.
I mean, the thing is, I projected him to be like 18% owned, and that's why I'm just not going to play an 18% owned Panther.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people were asking me questions about ownership. I'm kind of writing about it a little bit in the newsletter. But ownership is just it's so difficult this year, and it's been difficult since like week 9 of last year, I think. It's just, there's just this weird balancing act where like ownership projections are good, and then people look at it and people talk about how they probably shouldn't play X, Y, or Z player, or X, Y, or Z player is undervalued. And I don't know if more people are reading content. I don't know if more people are MMEing. I don't know what it is. Like, contest sims are going to have part of it where they're pushing leverage plays that are better plays than the popular plays. Like there's those parts of it, but it is so hard to nail down things like Deontay Johnson just tanking in ownership, Drake London just tanking in ownership, but then all of a sudden, Jalen Tolbert there wasn't even a play at 5K where you could pivot up or down on Tolbert.
I think it's just more DAX stacks. I just think it's more that there were just way more DAX stacks in the contest than expected, and Tolbert's 5K, so he fits in so many of them.
So I had Dak Prescott projected 11% ownership, and he turned out to be 15% ownership, right? So 4% jump. That's still a crazy jump for Jalen Tolbert, who didn't project that well across the industry.
In that range, he was one of the better projected players in that 5K range. He was around like Lad, like if you didn't play Tolbert, maybe you played Lad McConkey instead in that spot, right? Like that was kind of like where you were going. Maybe you took a shot on like DeAndre Hopkins or something. Or
what did the industry have Jalen Tolbert projected for? What was his projection?
I don't know. Probably about 12, probably something.
I had him for 10. So I don't.
Yeah, you were lower. Yes. So
you lower? Okay. So that makes sense as to why I would have him projected a bit lower, I guess. But that was that
not dramatically though, James. Not dramatically. Just a lot of people were playing. I mean, remember, CD was 8,600. So let's say you wanted to play a DAX stack, but also play Derrick Henry. Like, you ain't playing Lamb. You're going Prescott, Tolbert, Ferguson.
Yeah.
And there you go. Now you could play. You could play Derrick Henry. Now you could play. You could play Drake London in those lineups. It was tough to build a lineup that played CeeDee Lamb with any other expensive player.
Yeah.
The one player that I played a lot of that did well was AJ Brown at
Yeah.
7,800. 8% owned, which is about what I expected, but I played a Hurts lineup, and I didn't mind playing AJ Brown by himself because, like, I wasn't playing CeeDee Lamb as a one-off with the Cowboys being like the second well, I thought they would be the second chalkiest team. I thought the Falcons would be the chalkiest team.
Yeah.
So I just played. Instead of playing Derrick Henry, instead of playing CeeDee Lamb, I played AJ Brown in that spot. The problem is that I didn't play any Chris Godwin. So when you play no Chris Godwin and he scores 38 points at receiver, and he's 9% owned, you're going to need him. And I also didn't play any Zay Flowers outside of my 2 Lamar lineups. So, like, my combinations is like I didn't have any Godwin, but I did have Hurts Brown. I had McLaurin. I had Deontay Johnson. Here's the one that surprised a lot of people. I didn't fall into the trap, which could have been a trap or could have not been a trap. I don't know what your thoughts on it is. If I could avoid playing players from teams that have very low implied totals, I do. And I don't care what the volume is. It's like Trey Tucker was 4,200. He scored 0 points.
Yeah.
He got, I think, 2 targets. And it's like, because Jacoby Myers was doubtful on Saturday. Zamir White was doubtful. And it's like, okay, well, Adams is on. It's like, who's catching the ball on this team? You got probably Bowers more than anyone. But, Trey Tucker's got to get a 25% target share then. No, he doesn't. And what's the difference between playing Trey Tucker and Demario Douglas?
Right.
What's the difference between playing Trey Tucker and, truthfully, like Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hot? Like the teams that aren't good. It's like we don't rush to play Patriots receivers, and it's essentially that's what. It's not like Trey Tucker's going to come in and go, I deserve and earn a 38% target share. Right?
Well,
he's just a cheap
targets.
receiver on a shit team.
Yeah, he's not good enough to earn a 38% target share. I had him projected for 9 fantasy points. I also had him projected for 12% ownership.
Okay.
I didn't have any reason to play him. And I like Ray McCloud more in a vacuum as well. So, like, I was going to be more inclined to play Ray McCloud. He ended up doing badly, but he didn't end up doing as badly as Trey Tucker. And I had Ray McCloud projected for more ownership than Trey Tucker, and he came in under,
right?
Which was fine with me. People love to look for these kind of like next man up situations. But
Eric Beinfort calls it the NBA vacation of the thought process in NFL. He talks about that on the 11 a.m. Eastern Sunday block show, that, people think it's like, oh, well, if this guy's off the field, then all of their usage has to go. Like, Jokic is out, which means Jamal Murray is like that kind of works in the NBA, but not really in the NFL.
It's a usage thing, right? I mean, you can really make a pretty good comparison there. I think that Eric's right. It is the NBA-ification of it, where people are like, oh, if Devontae Adams is out, or say CeeDee Lamb, right? If CeeDee Lamb is out, he averages like a 32% target share or something. If he's out, that doesn't mean that Jalen Tolbert now is going to be the 32% target share guy, because Jalen Tolbert's not good enough to demand 32% of the targets. The reason why CeeDee Lamb has a 32% target share is because he's really, really good at football. Jalen Tolbert's just not that good. So when it happens on a team like Houston, Houston was a really good example this week, where Nico Collins goes from having a 32 to 35% target share and like 55% of the air yards or something. Like, the next man up should feasibly be the next best wide receiver. But Stephon Diggs doesn't run the same routes that Nico Collins does. You know who does? Tank Dell. So Tank Dell ended up getting one of the longer touchdowns that Nico Collins would have gotten, but Tank Dell's not as good as Nico Collins. So he didn't get all the targets, right? So it's not like, it is a very nuanced thing. I think there's some people who do this kind of stuff really, really well in terms of like managing the idea of if a player is good enough. Dwayne McFarland, who works over at Fantasy Life, he calls it, when I talk to him about it, he calls it the next out. He kind of looks at it as like a pecking order, where you have the alpha at the top, right? And then the next guy, if the next guy up can be an alpha, then they will demand that target share. We see that when AJ Brown is out. Devontae Smith is good, dude. Like, he is going to get a 30% target share.
Right,
but we don't have that.
Both are out. It's not like Jahan Dotson turns into AJ
right.
Brown.
Exactly. Yeah. If there's another alpha on the team, they're going to get those targets. We see with Jaden Reed, right? Like, with Jaden Reed, when Christian Watson is out, Jaden Reed is going to demand those targets. It doesn't mean that he's going to crush, but he's good enough to then be the next alpha.
Well, Romeo Doubs is gonna verbally demand those targets.
He is.
I'm not saying that he's gonna earn.
He's gonna stage a standout so that he can get those, and then he ends up getting 2 touchdowns the next week. So maybe we're the wrong ones. Yeah, it's really, really interesting, and it goes to show one of the things that is kind of undervalued in this industry now at this point. It used to be overvalued. Now I think it's undervalued. It's hard to build good projections. And I think people who do build good projections are undervalued at this point, because being able to understand those situations and understand those roles, I think we've kind of jumped the shark in a lot of ways of like taking what I call to be like, you and I have talked a lot about pitch type data, right? In the MLB, where people are like, oh, this player's really good against sliders and they're going up against this team and this pitcher throws a slider X%. And it's like, okay, so that stuff is really cool, but do you know how many actual sliders he's going to see that he can hit? 3. 3 the entire game. So you're taking all of this cool pitch type data and it's like you have 3 instances to get it right.
And it may not even be over the plate, right? It may not be over the plate. And a slider is it's going to be a pitch that's described as a slider.
Right. So we don't even know, like, there's sliders, there's sweepers, there's 2 seams, like they all do the same kind of stuff, right? So now we have that with coverage type data for NFL, right? Oh, this team plays cover 2 seam 41% of the time, and this player has a TPRR of 49% against a play. And it's like, okay, so that player is going to get like their entire target share is 5 targets per game. So of those 5 instances where they might get a target against a 41% chance, so now we're down to 2.5 targets per game. And it's like, oh, they get a boost of 100%. So now they're going to get 3 targets. Like, people just don't understand. It's all of this really interesting, cool stuff that people desperately want to use. It just doesn't matter all that much. It just doesn't. So I think that it's unsung heroes at this point, the people who can work through the noise and kind of have a better understanding. And the guys at RotoGrinders do a great job. Like, it's an unsung hero situation. I just wanted to call that out really quick.
Defense yesterday. Just you play the Bucks defense against Spencer Rattler. They give up 1 million points and you still get there. And that just play the 27% on defense and you were good, right? You didn't have to pivot, right? Isn't that the most frustrating part? Because it's the easiest position to just like, well, I'm just gonna play this other thing instead. And nope.
No, because it doesn't matter. Because look, even they crushed and they still were just in this clump of 4 defenses that you could have played.
Right, but they're all expensive. I mean, these Pittsburgh and Houston were more expensive. You could have played 200 more. You could have played the Lions against the Cowboys.
It doesn't matter. None of these things won you a GPP. Like, the worst case scenario, if you would have played a defense yesterday, was playing like the Panthers defense at -2. Then you needed a different defense. But like, if you played a defense, look how many defenses scored 10+ fantasy points. It's 6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6.
Life is hard. You could have played any of them. You could have played any of those 6 defenses.
Well, why do I have to even switch when I could just play the chalky one and they get me 10 anyway?
It's the same thing as running backs. Just don't spend time on it. Just pick whatever. It doesn't matter. Play Sean Tucker at defense. You can get 40 fantasy points from him. Doesn't matter. I think, look, the chalky defense is now crushed 2 weeks in a row, right? So people are now going to be telling me that I should be eating the chalk at defense. And I will continue to say
Tampa Bay defense, Bucky Irving, easy game. 10.8% of the entire Millie field, which is 176,000 entries. So there were like almost 19,000 lineups.
Yep.
That had the Bucky Irving and the Tampa Bay defense together.
Yep.
And 13% of them were in the top 1%. So
AKA,
who we are, right?
It was undervalued.
Undervalued. Yeah.
It was undervalued. Look, pair defense with your running back and just do your thing. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Look, with tight ends, pair them with your quarterback. With defenses, pair them with your running back and just move along. And by the transitive property, if running back doesn't matter and you're pairing your defense with your running back, then obviously defense doesn't matter either. So just the only decision.
Running back doesn't matter. So basically any running back and DSD combination, just play because it doesn't matter.
Then it doesn't matter. Just go for it. The only decisions that you're making every single week should be who should I sack and who's my one-off wide receiver. That's it.
Everything else, I just run sim labs and whatever it gives me, who cares?
Whatever, who cares? It doesn't. It truly, and you and I'm kind of making a joke about it, but truly, like, make less hard decisions. That is a key aspect of DFS. If you can every single week, it does not matter what tool you are using. If you can make a rule that says, lock my DST with one of my running backs and lock my tight end with the quarterback that I use, I think that you will find better success than if you were trying too hard to find the right answer to each one.
Well, the general theory, I mean, we talk about it in Theory of DFS, which is, our courses. 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. That you should spend the proportional amount of time on the decisions that matter versus the decisions that don't matter from a decision standpoint, not an outcome standpoint, which means like if a defense, well, do I play this defense or that defense? And one defense scores 20 and the other scores 0. Like, obviously that matters in outcome, but as far as the decision, it may be a coin flip, right? And on coin flip decisions, you should spend almost no time. Like, if it comes down to the fact of you flipping a coin, then just do that and move on. But the decisions that matter the most, it's very similar in poker, James, which I play regularly, more so now than I did in the past, that I study spots. There so many, I see so many threads and stuff of people talking about these weird spots. So I was in this hand and this thing happened and there's 3 people here and blah, blah, blah. And this card came out and it's like a spot that like, yeah, that's an odd spot to be in. Getting, someone jams on you in a weird spot with a weird combination and they take all the time to study, like, what should I have done in that spot? Should I have called? Should I have raised? Should I have folded? Should I have whatever? And I look at this and I go, how often does this spot come up? Like, you're spending all this time rationalizing one spot where all the decisions are bad. Like, it's just like, I understand if you did any of them, I don't blame you. And in those spots, it's just like you could have flipped a coin at that point. And then, and then you don't see thread upon thread of someone opens on the button and I call on the big blind. And it's like, oh, like the most, like the thing that's going to happen the most, right? Someone in the cutoff raises and I 3-bet on the button or I 3-bet at a small blind. It's like, oh, you mean things that happen like 5, 6, 10 times per session? Like, they seem like the simplest thing. Like, it's like, well, I have ace king, I raise, like it's like they just go on, move. It's like, well, are there any fundamental things that maybe you're doing wrong in those spots they happen so much more often. You should spend more time going into, if you want to deep dive into those spots and go, okay, let me put this into the solver and let me put this here and do that. Like, that's much more worthwhile because it happens so much more often. The same thing applies to DFS, that, when James, when you say, well, it doesn't matter, it's like, it's not like it doesn't matter. It's just that if you're spending an hour trying to figure out the best defense, it's probably not the best, the highest variance, widest range outcome decision that you could have. It's not worth it. If you, well, aren't you glad I played the defense that was 2% owned and scored 24 points? And then you look at the lineup and it's a Will Levis lineup. And it's like, maybe the problem was you played a Will Levis triple stack that projected very badly. Right. And like, yes, you got your defense right, but you still didn't even cash because the main core of your lineup, it's like, well, I'm going to fade these two. I'm going to play 1% on running back, 2% on running back, and a 3% on stack. And my product ownership is like this. But boy, did I get my defense right. It's like, no, you have fundamental flaws in the rest of what you're doing, and you do more of that than what defense to choose. That's the general gist of this.
Right. When I say that things don't matter, what I mostly mean is that you could probably just the options that you have in front of you are not going to move much of the needle. Like the levers that we always talk about over in the theory of DFS is like, you should care a lot more and you should put a lot more effort into the things that are actually going to make you money. That's why I say all the time, you're basically making 5 decisions every single slate. What are you going to do with the highest owned player, the highest owned stack, and what are you going to do with your roster construction? Those are kind of like the 3 main things. And the highest owned players, you're probably going to think through the 5 highest owned players individually, right? What are you going to do with Bucky Irving? Are you going to play him or not? Okay, so think about that one. What are you going to do with CeeDee Lamb? Are you going to play him or not? What does that mean, right? Like, and take some time on that. Are you going to play the Baltimore-Washington game environment, right? Like, that's a really important one to get right on this slate. Think through that kind of stuff. And then after you've taken it, should take you maybe an hour to think through like the 5 hardest decisions of the entire slate. And this is for all of DFS. This isn't just NFL. Like, think through the 5 hardest decisions. And then after that, it's like, all right, well, put together some things that make sense. And the rest of it is probably just going to be based on projections and having good roster construction tendencies. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. People just try way too hard.
Right, because if you're like, okay, in this lineup, I'm not going to play Bucky Irving. Well, then you could play Bijan Robinson, and you could play CeeDee Lamb. You could play the Tampa Bay defense without Bucky Irving. And then if you go into a lineup, it's like, I'm going to play a lineup with no Cowboys. It's like, well, then play Drake London. That's fine, because like you want to avoid lineups where your lowest owned player is 20% owned. Right? You want to avoid your cash line. Yeah, essentially, you want to avoid your cash lineup. Right, because that's going to be combinatorically much higher owned. Maybe not as a complete duplicate of your entire lineup, but the combinations, like, dude, my
you're not going to
cash
have relative value. You can't pass anymore.
Right, my cash lineup on DraftKings was Dak Prescott, Bucky Irving, Bijan Robinson, Tony Pollard, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, Ladd McConkey, Jake Ferguson, and the Buccaneers defense. So it's like, dude, was there anyone like Jake Ferguson was 15% owned? Like that was the lowest owned player in the millie in that lineup. Like you can't play that. I mean, no, Deontay Johnson actually was the lowest owned in the millie.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, but in cash games and double ups, he was like 35% owned. It's like people didn't avoid him in cash games.
Yeah.
You want to avoid those types of lineups because they're just going to be duplicated. Not entirely, but duplicated. You're going to be 1v1, 2v2 with so many more lineups that it's like, okay, how do I only play? Even if you take your cash lineup and go into lineup HQ and go max 4, and then build a lineup, and then whichever. Some lineups have Bucky Irving, some lineups don't, some lineups have Lamb, some lineups don't, some lineups have Bijan, but they won't get all 4. You won't get 4 out of the 8 spots together. And then it's going to be the better projected lineups that have a quarterback with a wide receiver with a tight end or something like that. And I mean, that's how I build mine. There you go. That's all you need. I mean, you could take a look at some lineups. If you like it, you're good.
with that said, I'm going to lead into something here really quick. But with that point of take your cash lineup, all of those high-owned players, and say max 4, that's for large field. For small field, max 6 and min 4.
Right,
max
right.
Min 4. Because you want the ownership. In smaller fields, you want to lower your volatility. But all of this said, Chris Longo, earlier in the chat, had said that he tried a RotoGrinder subscription, built 100 lineups, and none of them ended up being good. So you still have to have an understanding of how to build lineups when using an optimizer, right? And Blender and I talk about this stuff. Basically, Blender and I, our entire job and existence is talking about how to build good lineups. We've written 2 books on it, and we talk about it every Monday. In order to build good lineups with a optimizer, you have to have an understanding of how to build good lineups in the first place, right? And if you
build one lineup that is plus EV first before you try to use tools to build 150.
And then try to replicate that lineup using an optimizer. So, Chris, what you had said was that your hand-built lineups did really well. So what I would suggest is trying to take the lineups that you built by hand and then put it in, and then try to replicate it in the optimizer at RotoGrinders and try to replicate your process. And if you think that your lineups that you built by hand are really, really good, then try to replicate them in the optimizer. That's what you should be trying to do each week.
Sure. And if you want to play lineups that project 35 points below others, then that's perfectly fine. And we would have no problem playing against them.
Right.
James, people can find you at Pay Dirt DFS. I get your newsletter in my mail, but your breadcrumbs, your words of wisdom, and that's free. So people could just go there and just get your newsletter at least.
Yeah. If you want to just go grab the newsletter, you can grab it. It's called the Breadcrumbs. It goes out 4 days a week, and it does have, words of wisdom, life stuff, including some free bets and some content. If you want DFS models, betting models, different articles, stuff like that, you can go find it over at paydirtdfs.com as well.
And like I mentioned before, combo light package here at RotoGrinders, the 4 major sports for I think all $39.99 a month or something really cheap. It's I don't know why. You get Sim Labs, you get all the IQ products, you get all of the premium written content here at RotoGrinders. You don't get the lineup HQ, you don't get some of the more advanced stuff, but that's why it's called light. But you don't have to worry about which sport or whatever, especially coming into October. We're gonna have NBA starting soon. We're gonna have college basketball. We have college football. We got NFL, NBA. We got NHL. Obviously, no, that started this past week. So definitely take advantage of that. Click on the link in the description for more information. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Give me those thummy thumbs. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Pre-lock show later tonight on the YouTube channel. You should see the thumbnail for that. And I'll see you back tomorrow. We're talking NHL. Tuesday's NHL. Yay. Yay. And then the rest of the week is NFL stuff. And yeah, so like I'm normally here Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.